Hey everybody, it's me, Asinellus, and welcome back to another video. Welcome back to Reddit. Welcome to r/ProRevenge, where people go above and beyond to get the revenge that they truly deserve. And today we get a story that is a revenge many years in the making, but is oh so sweet. But I don't want to waste a single other second, so let's get going with the video. Evil stepfather gets what he deserves. When I was 15, my mum started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later, he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built halfpipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my stuff cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later, he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there, it escalated into full-fledged beatdowns for the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day, he decided to take my extensive Pokemon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of it all because 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being a nerd playing with Pokemon cards and reading comics and books. My mum never intervened, and in fact acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money because that little jerk will just spend it on comics and other stuff. One day, I took maybe $3 and some change out of his change jar so that I could buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of a butthole and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I had done. This man actually called the police and pressed larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, proceeded to beat me senseless. At that point, I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that he had been trying to talk my mum into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge, I ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple of years miserable and afraid, frequently contemplating suicide. Once I was out on my own, I didn't speak to my mum for several years. We eventually reconciled, and by that point, they had married. I was a lot bigger than I had been as a young teenager, and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out she had stage 4 cancer and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him. So she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he would receive a set amount of money upon separation and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He had spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and then had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debts shortly before they started dating. And my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation and, despite the agreement, had been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal. I put an immediate end to that. He was past the deadline to remove his personal effects and they were now legally mine to dispose of as I saw fit. I sold his baseball card collection for around 14 grand and his autographed sports memorabilia roughly 11 grand, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment along with several finished pieces of furniture that he had made. 6,500 I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, platinum band, 3 diamonds, roughly 2 carats, wedding band, his coin collection, I also collect coins, and some tools and other odds and ends. Now comes the real fun. Around a month ago, I finally saw him at the grocery store. As he was leaving, I approached him. I told him I had sold his collections as he was pushing his cart out towards his car. He reacted exactly as I expected. He took a swing at me multiple times. I already had my phone ready to dial 911. Several of these punches missed, and the ones that did connect didn't have much effect, because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s, and I no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try to punch me as I spoke to the 911 operator, and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school. And because he had never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he'd hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he had also beat me as a child, causing several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring for local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked, and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least that's what they heard from the kids who were attending summer school at the time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him in or help him out, so the abusive stepfather ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart, so that he could afford the rent on his trashy little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though that Walmart is not the closest to my house, that is now the only place where I go grocery shopping or to purchase anything that I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need, just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him on it, he said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible, and he had to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside, and it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money, I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had a rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll use my credit card." I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set, and so on Monday, when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above-ground pools. And as he's ringing it out, I tell him, "I know that daughter is just going to love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway." Alright, I've really got not much to add to the story. It was absolutely amazing, but if you've got a second, could you please go down and hit that like button? This is something that really helps my channel get discovered. Something about the YouTube algorithm where it favors video interaction, but don't worry, I'm not going to waste another second, and let's keep going with the video. Sweet revenge. My father is a plumber. Great guy, does the work you want and does his best on every job, acting like it's his own home, just to try and make sure the customer is satisfied. He was doing a job at a home where they wanted a complete bathroom remodel, asking the owner of the home the whole way through for specific things. Where they wanted the sink, shower, toilet to be located, what kind of tiles, what designs for said tiles, even down to what color grout they'd want. He did everything to their specifications, and on one of the last days of work, the day he was grouting everything, they decided to say it wasn't the correct tiles. They didn't like it, and he was going to pay him half of what he quoted them. Half of what he was owed for this 2-week-long job. 2 weeks being a decently short amount of time to demo and rebuild a whole bathroom. He told them that was wrong, that they literally picked everything, so why was it wrong now? They didn't care. They told him to finish and leave. My father, ever the people pleaser, did so. Except he mixed sugar in with the grout, then grouted their bathroom. Their whole bathroom was finished with sugar grout, guys. He only got paid half, but much more than that they had to spend on bug spray for years. Years. Nothing could keep the bugs away from that sweet, sweet bathroom. according to a neighbor of theirs at least, who was a friend of my father's. Don't F with your servicemen. Pay them. Don't be a jerk, or they may just be extra sweet. And from what I gather in the edits, this wasn't an official agreement, so they couldn't pursue him in court. It was a sort of shake hands and verbal agreement. And on top of that, these people had to remodel their whole bathroom within a year, because the grout wouldn't hold and they had to replace all the tiles. But even better, even after the remodel, the sugar was still sort of remaining in the cracks and stuff, so the bugs were still there. So that was definitely the best thing this person could have done to get his revenge. Honestly, he couldn't have caused them any more grief. Alright everyone, and for the last story today, I want to warn you that it does have some disturbing aspects, so make sure to listen at your own discretion. The beginning. From the beginning, Hank had been involved in my life. A family friend and a member of my parents' church. He worked in the nursery and watched over me. He always helped out with the children's programs in the church and even watched over me outside of the church. Since he was a friend of my father's, it didn't seem weird when he got me gifts, took me places, or gave me a little spending money. Also, he had a son my older brother's age, Jim, that my brother was friends with. Year 1. When I was in the 6th grade, or around 10, my brother would hang out with Jim every Sunday after church. And I wanted to come too, because I wanted to be like my brother. Obviously, they didn't want me around, so while they were ignoring me, I developed a friendship with Hank. We would play video games together in his basement for hours until my brother and I had to leave. I don't know when exactly it happened, but one day, Hank was standing behind me watching me play when he ran his hands over my body. I was confused and didn't know what to do, but it didn't matter because just as quickly as it started, it was done. It was stupid, but I continued to come over and occasionally he would do it again. He started threatening me that if I told anyone, he would know and he would kill me, and that I wasn't allowed to stop coming over, so my parents wouldn't wonder why. Although it didn't happen often, it was picking up, but he was also taking me more places. I didn't like being with him, and I did at the same time. Year 2. Around 7th grade, things picked up. Whenever I came over, he would touch me, and he would do it for longer each time. Even when he took me out, and when we were at church, he would take me into bathrooms. Around this time, even though I still wasn't sure what I was feeling, I started to resist his actions. And consequently, he started the physical abuse. He would hit me with whatever was around. Books, computer keyboards, etc. and punch and kick me. Once, he even stabbed me in the back with a syringe. Around this time, he started taking me to a pool. At the pool, he would touch me in the water and had me touch him in the shower and use my mouth. Year 2.5. The summer after my 7th grade year, my church went on a camping trip to a lake. My parents didn't really do that stuff, but Hank and Jim invited my brother and I to come with them. Since my brother was always with Jim, Hank had almost 24-hour access to me. During this trip, Hank was on me whenever he had the chance. Year 3. Around my 8th grade year is when the verbal and psychological abuse started. Hank decided to take the route of constantly demeaning, degrading, and insulting me every chance he got. On top of his words, he started making me wear a leash, crawl around on all fours, and eat dog food, all while naked. He even had a collar made that said, "Hank's Little Bee." Now this whole time I had been dealing with mental illnesses that were only worsened by what he was doing. That year I started really cutting and I tried killing myself multiple times, which landed me in the psychiatric hospital twice. After coming out of the hospital for overdosing, Hank took me to a movie and explained to me that he was going to stop. He said he really cared for me and didn't want me to end up dead. And he really did. I was 3. But my mind was still conflicted, and I was still scared of him, so I didn't tell anyone. I slowly did my best to go to church less and less. The aftermath. That wasn't the end of my hospital trips. Even without his abuse, I was mentally unstable. I kept cutting and attempting for years. It was bringing down my education and my relationships with my family and friends. Finally, when I was in 10th grade and in the hospital, I let it slip to a therapist that I had been abused, and she helped me tell my parents. Slowly, I was able to tell my parents a little of what happened, and eventually, who did it. The revenge. As soon as I said it was Hank, it started. First, I talked to a police officer, although I could barely say anything. Then, I was brought to an establishment designed for kids to talk about what has happened to them. I talked to a woman and told her all about the abuse. Well, the sexual abuse. I was still scared and couldn't bring myself to mention the physical or others. The case against Hank started, and they started looking for the evidence. One day, I let it slip to my parents that other abuse happened, causing me to go back, and this time, I told them everything. They got their evidence and arrested Hank, but that didn't mean it was over. The worst of it was still coming. It was one thing to talk to one person who was trained to talk to me, but now I would have to testify at a pre-trial. I had to relive my experiences sitting across from Hank, and then I had to be interrogated by his lawyer. Luckily, I was stone-faced. I was able to talk to his lawyer without breaking down. I don't really remember exactly what he said, but Hank's lawyer wasn't the best, and some of my responses to his questions made the people in the court laugh a little. After that was the real thing, a trial with 12 strangers sitting there listening to my pain. During the pre-trial, I was kind of quiet and scared, but I went into that courtroom the day of the trial and confidently told everyone what that jerk had done. He was guilty on 1 count of 3rd-degree child abuse, 2 counts of 2nd-degree child abuse, 2 counts of 2nd-degree criminal sexual conduct, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct to the 3rd degree, and 1 count of criminal sexual conduct to the 1st degree. The sentence, 25 to 40 years. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for Reddit videos 3 times every week. Videos come out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And if you've got your own stories, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. I would absolutely love to hear them. But for now guys, I hope you all enjoyed. That's it from me, and all I want to do is see you all here next time. See you later guys.